Welcome back to Appian World 26. We're streaming live here in Orlando. I'm Alison Kosik alongside Dave Vellante. Good morning.
Good morning. It's good. Quiet again. It's going to pick up later.
It is.
I got to say, these JW Marriotts, they do it right, don't they? Nice hotel, good venue, very comfortable.
Absolutely. Yeah. Coffee's great. Let's talk about the power of the partnership, shall we? Let's dig in with our guests. Scott Van Valkenburgh, the Senior Vice President of Global Partners and Alliances with Appian. Good morning and welcome to theCUBE.
Good morning, thanks for having me.
We've also got Dan Scott with PwC. Welcome to theCUBE as well. So tell me about this partnership.
So we've had an alliance for quite a long time. PwC is one of our most strategic alliances within Appian, and Dan and the team have been experts at Appian delivering value for customers for years.
And what's really worked? What's some of the, maybe some of the standout examples that you can give?
Dan, what are some of the viewpoints from the firm?
So I think really for us, we add value when we add both the business understanding to the technology that Appian brings. So for us, it's usually about how do we transform someone's business, not just how do we upgrade from one version to another.
You know, go ahead, please.
No, go
So I was going to say, PwC, the internet was going to put you out of business, and the cloud was going to put you out of business. Now, LLMs are going to put you out of business. So somehow you guys keep growing and powering through that. So what's happening in the field, actually, both internally at the company, because you guys have such an opportunity to drive transformation, and you kind of know a little bit about transformation.
That's right.
And then you can bring that to the customer base, your client base, along with partners like Appian. So where are you at internally, and how are you translating that externally with your partners?
Look, this is a journey, I think that you're right, that we're taking both ourselves and we're taking with our customers. And so we have to do it to ourselves first to be comfortable with what we need to do with our customers. So we've been on an AI journey for over 2 years, deploying that, changing the way we do business, improving the value we deliver to the clients, and also making it faster and less expensive to do so. So our customers have challenged us to do what they then ask us to help them do, which is to help them transform their business. So this is a great spot. We have a lot of legacy software, and we've been helping clients and ourselves unlock the value in that software, extract the business logic that's been built up over 30+ years, understand what that's actually doing, and then figure out how I put it in a modern tool so that I can then do agentic on it and transform the way that I do business, but not lose what's made the company distinctive.
What have been the biggest challenges that come to mind as you've tried to modernize these legacy operations?
So controls have changed quite a bit. If you actually think about a lot of controls today that are people-based, they rely on people being concerned about violating company policies. Agents and some of the AI don't have that, so you need to build controls elsewhere. So previously, where you could rely on a person doing something, you really need to move that control into the process so that the process itself takes that, provides the appropriate governance, and still has the safety at a speed that you can actually make sense.
So when you think about things like, you talk about how you had a lot of legacy apps, that's not uncommon. When you think about things like data fabric, how you can access data without having to move it. And when you think about the way companies are organized, they all have their own data, they have their own data warehouse, their own data mart, their own BI tools.
Yeah.
And this is a lot of wrangling that has to happen, and by the time it's over, the market has changed. And so the promise is that with things like data fabric and abstraction layers on top, we can bust down those silos, and it has real implications for departments as well. Maybe we can dissolve some of that stovepiping and be more effective and be more efficient and go to market. Are you seeing that take hold yet? A bunch of earnings are coming out tonight. Everybody, all Wall Street wants to see a ROI. What's actually happening on the ground in the field? Are you seeing some of those dissolve? Are you seeing light at the end of the tunnel? Give us the sort of real world, on the ground truth.
Well, we're pretty excited with the alliance. If you start thinking about just Appian as a whole, we've been on a tear. We've had 6 quarters of growth. Yep. We have another quarter coming up that I'm excited to see how we do on the street. The biggest thing that Dan's talking about is everybody struggled with unlocking value with AI, right? Agents, is this going to be the end of jobs for everybody? But what we found out is if you can put a governance framework, controls, that you can have AI do the right things that AI is good for, you can scale, you can get past the legacy modernization and finally put that investment dollar versus just taking things out to be able to doing new things. And with our alliance together, we've had some great success transforming clients in simple things like our DocCenter, the ability to read documents and actually start doing stuff, whether it's going to be in KYC or AML and other financial institutions or insurance. So I think what you're going to see this policy, when you can put a framework for control, as Dan said, AI and process, it's really going to take and unlock the value, not only for productivity, but innovation.
So if I looked at the sort of the activity pie or the bar of a KYC or an AML compliance, how much of that is labor today, and are you able to attack that, or is it really not labor intensive and it's more just sort of automating so that you have less errors? Help us understand those two examples that you just gave, how your technologies and your services are helping compress that.
I'll speak a little bit about technology and I'll ask Dan you to think about the services, but just think about, let's take AML, anti-money laundering. One of the biggest things that banks are trying to do is see suspicious activity that could be fraudulent in nature. The process for a bank, you would think this would live in one place, but it could touch 9, 10 different groups within a bank. Someone has to determine something might be wrong, someone's then got to review it, someone's then got to follow up on it, but these people in these groups don't all live in one place and it's not all one technology. And what an application like Appian does is it bridges the gap. It may say, hey, this looks pretty incredibly unreal, would someone take a look at it? Well, that becomes a case and someone then in a different group has to look at it. In some of our clients, we were talking about even yesterday, we've taken them from 4 hours to look at a suspicious activity to 38 seconds. And then you go, if I can catch that before it happens, we're really making progress. Maybe Dan, you could talk a little bit about some of the process steps and services around that.
So, look, I think a lot of the things you just said, it's interesting to see as clients are trying to transition from pilots to actually production. They need to actually get this into production, and we're actually doing this today with a client where we took the product that he talked about, DocCenter, and using AI in a real production scenario. But to your point, I think process workers have become really the new manual laborers, and we need to upskill those folks into more knowledge workers who are able to become managers of the process instead of the ones doing it. And you get not only some cost savings from that in terms of fewer hours, but you also get increased quality, speed that you were just talking about. And so it's not just about the cost savings anymore, it's also about improving the way you do business.
Yeah, so that example that you gave, Scott, you've got kind of the needle in the haystack.
Yeah.
You've got the compressed time to actually get to an answer. You've got the quality piece, so it reduces your risk, potential exposure to, I guess, fines, reputational damage, and the like. Okay, so the second part of that question is, Dan, you triggered something. Is, we were again at Google last week, and it was like, the era of agents is here, go! And you're like, whoa, hold on. You talk to the customers and you get to the ground truth, and it's like, well, we're being cautious. We talked last night, your CEO was like, we're East Coast AI, right? That was kind of a great, go fast, but don't break
He didn't
things.
have his gold chain on.
Right. Yeah, right, exactly. So where are your customers at in terms of moving into production at scale? I hosted a roundtable of executives at Mobile World Congress. Very few were aggressively going after complicated multi-agents because they couldn't govern them yet. And so that seems like you guys are working on that layer or a step of the S-curve. Can you sort of help us understand where, I know it's a spectrum, but how would you characterize where customers are on the journey?
So I think you're right, it's a spectrum. And I think they're coming out of the, hey, I'm testing this out, and into the actually, I'm doing this, but I'm putting guardrails on it. I need to have a human in the loop still at the end to take a review of this. I want to make sure that the quality is good. They're then getting comfortable with, hey, the quality is actually better than what I had before, the speed is actually better than what I had before, and so now, how can I understand where the human is still needed, and where the AI can actually take over and give me the benefit that I've been looking for. And so that's where they are in the process. I agree with you that multi-agent, there's a few folks who are doing that. It's coming, but I think the great thing about this tool is that it allows companies to move along that process towards maturity, and as they're ready, the tool's ready.
Do you feel like PwC is significantly ahead of its customers on that journey, or are you struggling with some of the same challenges and cautions, and it's actually maybe closer? Because I know, you talk to Google, like they're miles ahead, NVIDIA's miles ahead, but you guys are a big, far-flung global organization and face up many of the same challenges.
So look, I think we try and have humility in that we struggle with many of the same problems that our customers have. Mm-hmm. And I'll be honest with you, I think that makes us better consultants. We're not confused as to why this transformation is hard. This transformation is hard. We've been doing that transformation ourselves, and so when we sit down at a table with someone, we're not talking about theoretical things, we're talking about steps that we've already taken ourselves and know work, and know can work for our customers.
What is the nature of the partnership in detail? I'm sure there's a go-to-market component. Yep. You guys obviously have a professional services organization that really knows how to use Appian and tune it. PwC picks up from there. Can you just sort of describe the nature of the relationship in more depth?
I think it carries on from the question you just asked. If you look at every client, they're struggling. Like I read an article last night, apparently Claude erased a company's entire database that was in production with no backup. So when you talk about controls, that can put people a little feeling uncomfortable and at risk. And what Appian does is deliver an incredible platform that's governed at scale. We do billions of transactions. We are the engagement layer for work. And what PwC brings is the engagement layer for domain and process in that change and transformation. So that's why when clients can go, can I believe in Appian? They can believe in the technology, but they said, hey, do you really understand the depth of my KYC? Do you understand my pharmaco-labeling issues? Do you understand insurance regulatory compliance issues? And that's not our sweet spot. Our sweet spot is giving the best technology platform to ensure you can grow your agentic, you can do your processes, you can do automations, and your database doesn't get erased. And with PwC, we get the ability for them to really have that reach and confidence to help that client go through that journey.
You had me at wiped out the entire database. I have to go find that article and read it. I did not have a chance yet. Looking ahead, what does success look like a year from now for you? How do you see this alliance delivering even more impact? Where are you in a month to 2 years from now?
Well, from our perspective, one of the key things when I joined Appian and I got a chance to work with Dan and the team is we doubled down our investment. We put more people on the team, we hired senior leaders to help drive and accelerate this type of innovation in the area of AI to drive. And what you're going to see from PwC and Appian and the Alliance is helping really transform at an enterprise level versus a project level. For example, legacy modernization, you mentioned. Everybody's had this dream of getting off old apps and getting to new ones and getting the power of AI. I think you're going to see some surprising things with what we're going to be doing with PwC over the next 12 months.
And what are your thoughts over the next 12 months?
Look, I think it's going to be an exciting time. We've got a lot of solutions. I think he mentioned one which is called labeling. That is a very obtuse term for, hey, if you've got a headache and you look at the back of whatever you're about to take to solve that problem, chances are it has a label on it, and that label needs to be correct. I know I want it to be when I take that drug. So that's a very fragmented process today, and it's something that Scott sort of talked about of how can we actually bring solutions to our clients. So we know this is a fragmented process, we know that it needs automation, orchestration, not just to make that process easier for the companies to comply, but also to make sure that the quality in this sort of mission critical thing is high. And so that's one of the solutions that we're sort of trying to bring together as we're also doubling down on our alliance with Appian because we're excited about the opportunity that I think that brings to our clients.
What does that legacy modernization, the app modernization, look like? I mean, every company that's not a startup has legacy apps.
Right, that's right.
So, and you know, they're reticent to just chuck them, because there's real value there. So what does that modernization look like? What does it entail? Maybe work backwards from the North Star. Is it to get an abstraction layer that it speaks AI? Is it to make it AI native, which sounds like a rip and replace? Is it to migrate the app? What does that actually look like?
So what's really interesting is, as you look at all these legacy apps, some people don't even know what they still do, but they don't want to unplug them. and there's this common belief that I'll just vibe code, I'll instantly go build this, and now it'll do what it was doing. And what happens is when you find out, if you're just going to replace a process that was a bad process with new tech, it's still a bad process. So what the technology is, like what PwC has developed for extraction, and what Appian can do, is to build this governed layer, full stack application from the data, from the process layer, agentic layer, and then the UI layer. We're able to understand and compress the time of what does the app do, maybe it's across several apps because the process is an app, and then can we actually turn this into something that's going to be real, that's going to be useful, and work with the client to co-design. PwC has developed some great technology up front, and combined with Appian Composer, we've really been able to go in and show clients they can get real value by transforming, getting rid of legacy, saving on license costs, people costs, but actually a more powerful user application.
So is it exposing some of the metadata and application logic that's trapped inside those legacy apps and then making it available to do other things with? I presume that's maybe part of it. Just as an aside and kind of a joke, I vibe coded an Appian clone last night on theCUBE with Grok.
Did it bring you coffee? Like it's automatic process?
It was awesome. It built all this, it took like 5 minutes, it built all this Python code, and it said, here you go. And I said, that's awesome, does it work? He said, oh God, no. But it's okay. So back to my long-winded question here. Does it involve exposing that sort of locked up metadata and application logic, and then does it allow business users to vibe code a product requirements doc and test it out a little bit before they burn expensive developer hours? Is that what this modernization looks like, and what are the pieces that I'm missing?
Dan, maybe you can talk a little bit about the upfront piece.
Yeah, so look, I think you kind of hit on it there, which is this really starts with the business and understanding the business logic that's trapped in that legacy code. And so what we try and do is we extract that business logic and try and make sense of it. Over 30 years, you can imagine there are a number of changes that probably occurred to that application, and not all of that application is likely to still be in use. And so if you actually exercise some of that code, you would get something that was unintentional and not what you wanted. So the first step is to go through, and we've been for the last 2+ years using AI to extract business logic from those. We then take those back to the business requirements of what's actually being executed, so that we can then take that and put it into a modern application like Appian.
So AI helps extract it and probably helps interpret it. Like AI is probably pretty good at understanding, probably better than I am at understanding COBOL code and so things like that, but it doesn't always get it right.
That's right.
So it extracts, it interprets, and then it puts it in front of a human and says that, gotta get this right, and it gets you 90% or 80% of the way there.
That's why we go to market as a service. We're not selling the tool to do that extraction, we're selling an integrated team that brings tools so that someone can actually make sense of the results and say, okay, this is the business logic, this is what's actually running, now how do we want to modernize?
But after some time of doing that, in your business, this is why AI doesn't kill companies like PwC, you actually can turn all that into software, and then you'll start to see software-like marginal economics in your business at scale, which is, you got scale.
That's right, we call them accelerators because we use them as part of projects, but our accelerators get better all the time, and so that brings down the cost of our service. When the cost of something goes down, demand generally goes up, and so you're right, our model is not really at risk right now. As we bring the price of some of these services down, the opportunities just increase.
You hear a lot of these startups talk about how they're burning all these tokens, and the cost of tokens going up. when we look at the market, we say on average at the macro about 4% of companies' revenues is spent on IT or technology. We think the potential is for that to explode as companies start to scale with less labor. That could go to 10, 15%. Are you seeing any evidence of that? First of all, do you buy the premise? Are you seeing any evidence that organizations are going to be tapping that intelligence in the form of tokens through APIs and driving kind of value, new models, new revenue models? I mean, that's the promise. Any indication that that's happening, or is it sort of, let's just get this old stuff to work?
No, I mean,
I think it's early days.
yeah.
I think, just like when cloud happened, everybody was concerned, if I move my stuff up, is this going to cost me forever? How does this work? And you saw tremendous productivity gains, savings, but productivity gains. New technologies, faster innovations. I think with the proper governed use of AI, the concept of the price of tokens to go down, the consumption layer, how traditional software vendors like Appian, you're seeing other players like Salesforce, et cetera, figuring out what's that model as they shift to consumption-like models plus usage plus number of users or applications. So I will see what Dan thinks, but I think we're early stages. I think we're still looking for value and return, which Appian's had a few great home runs recently with simple things like DocCenter.
Look, usually when we start the conversation with the price of tokens, I would tell you that we're probably starting the conversation in the wrong spot. I think it's really about, okay, well what's the opportunity that I have here? And if I have a $100 million opportunity, the price of tokens usually is not a barrier to that. But I think as people rush into AI, a lot of times they're feeling pressure, hey, I need to do something with AI, not, okay, what are my biggest business problems? How can AI help me with that business problem? And then if you actually look at the metrics and what we were talking about earlier, of like, am I going to do this faster? What's the value that's me? Am I going to do it with improved quality? What's the value that's me? Am I going to be able to do something that I wasn't able to do before? There's value in all those things, and if you go in looking for the value instead of thinking about the token count, I think you'll have a much better experience. But if you just deploy these tools without thinking about the why, I think that's where a lot of people are looking at like, well, I've got a lot of new subscriptions and I'm not getting the value that I wanted. Great thing about Appian is in the process you can actually see how many hours did I save and how much faster did my process go, so you're not questioning how do I tell leadership about what the value was that we created here.
Yeah, and Scott, your cloud analogy is a good one, maybe on steroids here, but because you saw it, we all were just using the cloud because it was valuable, and all of a sudden, wow, the world was cloud. And then finance was complaining about the bill.
There were a couple of people that left a job running or two in cloud, and AWS felt excited about the extra income.
That's right.
All right, great conversation. Thanks for stopping by theCUBE this morning.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks a lot.
And you're watching theCUBE, the leader in live technology coverage. We'll be right back.